my first project was 6 units in Hurstville, and then I did 13 units in Wollongong and another 20 units in Wollongong. And my last project was 32 residential units and some commercial space, 1,500 square metres of commercial space. And it was an amazing project. So we were property developers. So we had a sizable portfolio by that time, and we used that portfolio as equity into this final project that we were doing. And we ended up building this beautiful building, and a week after we finished the building, the global financial crisis was splashed across the newspaper, and we lost all of our pre-sale contracts. And without getting into all the nitty-gritty, we basically lost the project. We lost all of our properties that we put in as equity. It took 2 years to kind of play out. So we walked out with $60,000, our cars and our clothes, and was left with nothing. 10 years of hard work just gone pretty much like that.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show for Australians who want to learn how to unlock their full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and to live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life that you really want. Let's get started.
Hi, freedom fighters. Are you interested in property investment? Do you love a challenge and want to take it to another level? Then how would you like to do the following job, which I'm going to describe in infinite detail so you can then decide if you actually fit the bill. Now, in this professional career, you're going to personally manage a portfolio of somewhere between 100 to 200 residential properties spread across a number of suburbs. You'll be the main point of contact for tenants, owners and contractors. As an initial overview, you'll be responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the properties, including collecting rent, handling maintenance requests, enforcing leases, and resolving disputes. You'll also prepare budgets, reports, and marketing plans, and ensure compliance with all the laws and regulations. You'll be responsible for finding and attracting prospective tenants for properties. You'll advertise the properties, conduct open inspections, answer inquiries, and negotiate lease terms and conditions. You'll also process applications, screen applicants, verify references and credit histories, and prepare lease agreements and documents. You'll also assist with tenant retention and satisfaction and handle complaints and issues. You'll document everything that you do in writing. You'll update records, coordinate repairs and assist tenants with all of their needs. You'll also complete administrative and financial tasks such as preparing invoices, receipts and statements and tracking expenses and income. You'll also handle the accounting and financial aspects of managing the properties. You'll be responsible for preparing and analysing financial statements, budgets and forecasts, as well as reconciling accounts, auditing transactions and ensuring compliance. And you'll help with financial reporting. You'll also have responsibility for organising, managing and overseeing the repairs and maintenance of the properties, including plumbing, electrical, carpentry, painting, safety compliance and landscaping, you name it. In addition, you'll inspect the properties regularly at the ingoing, ongoing and outgoing stages, and you'll look for safety and quality issues and report and manage on the rectification of all and any damages or defects. You'll also arrange, coordinate and oversee a panel of proven professional insured trades and contractors and ensure that the work is done according to specifications and standards, along with facilitating quotes, invoicing, payments and maintenance records. You'll also review and negotiate contracts for the engagement of required maintenance trades in order to keep the properties compliant, clean, repaired and in full working order. So as the overall end-to-end manager of multiple properties, you'll be taking the lead role of investment manager, quasi-architect, property marketer, external personnel hirer, fire administrator, incident commander, financial administrator and data analyzer, minor works project manager, safety officer, legal representative, law enforcer, conflict administrator, and pollution control officer, among many other constant dynamic challenges. You'll be the property portfolio eyes and ears on the ground, the middle person, the host, the maintenance facilitator and errand runner, the bearer and deliverer of both good and bad news. You'll be ever ready for worst-case scenarios, and unfortunately, you'll often become the convenient punching bag. So not only will you be a multitasking master that constantly juggles multiple spinning plates, but using an orchestra leading analogy, you'll be the maestro conducting a symphony of needs. You'll harmonise tenant well-being, property owner returns and contractor efficiency, while strategising for a vibrant property future and performance. And beyond all these, both individual and interweave task notes, you'll play the human melody, fostering community and resolving conflicts with your very diplomatic approach. In essence, you'll be the silent score that ensures everyone feels valued and respected, while all of the property's performances continue to thrive. Now, this is definitely not a job for the faint-hearted, and it's both immensely challenging but also rewarding, strangely, at the same time, because you're always going to be on the front line of property value creation for both landlords and tenants. Building your tenant and trade relationships is vital, and accurate landlord reporting and engagement is critical. Now, it promises to be a very rewarding career if you have excellent communication and customer services skills, along with the required attention to detail and analytic prowess. Now, to break down the details, because I've only just touched the surface there, your baseline tasks are going to include attracting and engaging landlord investors, negotiating fees and terms and executing lease agreements, marketing, advertising and promoting vacant properties, attracting, finding, screening, checking, securing and managing tenants, conducting ingoing, outgoing and ongoing regular inspections of all the properties, organising, managing and collecting rent, following up on rental arrears, organising payment plans and conducting rental reviews, along with the issuing of notices in strict accordance with the ever-changing legislation. Ensuring properties are compliant with all legislation, safety, building codes and standards, and minimum requirements. Management and coordination of repairs and maintenance, including identification, obtaining competitive quotes, liaising with contractors, organising access to properties, implementing on completion re-inspections together with associated invoice and payment management. Then there's implementing preventative maintenance measures to keep properties in great shape and reduce long-term costs, while meeting change of legal responsibilities and maintaining safe dwellings. You'll be arranging the payment of ongoing and outgoing bills, rates, taxes, etc. on all of the properties, including charging water and reimbursements. You'll be providing annual financial statements on all properties for every landlord. You'll facilitate tax appreciation schedules, specialised landlord insurance, and oversee claims management. You'll advise on and adhere to residential tenancy legislation and incorporate the continual changes. You'll represent landlords in residential tribunal or court disputes, handle bond disputes, negotiate neighbour disputes and conflict resolution between landlords and tenants, and facilitate lease renewals. In addition, you'll also be expected to oversee renovations, manage financial administration reporting, and provide investment advice. You'll ensure rents grow in line with the market. You'll provide tailored advice for value-add strategies to ensure the properties are what the tenants are actually looking for, and you'll enhance the value of all the properties through suggestions on minor additions or renovations. You'll provide market assessments and updates and share the latest market intel and changes, including local market updates, latest lending changes and updates on local zoning changes, etc., that impact on the property's potential. And you'll provide holistic recommendations to maximise investment cash flow and improve returns and growth through finance review referrals, implementation of special lease clauses that actually better protect landlords. So as you can see, you'll be expected to wear multiple competing hats simultaneously. But again, this is just the tip of the iceberg before we get to the following fun stuff that are parts of the job that almost no one talks about. Firstly, you need to be able to do whatever it takes. So you need to say goodbye to your pride and some of your dignity as you regularly get down and dirty like toilet bowls with your hands only millimetres from the filth, while trying not to drop your phone in the bowl while you're trying to get photo evidence for bond claims. And as you inspect properties, you'll quickly learn that your car will always be equipped with bin bags, disposable gloves, spray and wipes, scented candles, a couple of doormats, and you'll always have hand sanitizer and deodorant within very easy reach. You'll also have fun climbing into bins to retrieve personal belongings that have been accidentally discarded by landlords and tradies that don't see the value in them, and you'll often race against the clock on bin collection day when no one else can do it. Secondly, you'll need to become a part-time psychologist, a counsellor, and a conflict negotiator, because you'll be dealing with people's day-to-day lives in the privacy of their own homes. So get ready for the impacts of breakups, scandals, illnesses, job losses, redundancies, domestic abuse, addiction, drug labs, neighbour wars, and just general everyday life struggles, where you'll be dealing with countless tenants suffering personal breakdowns and the dynamics that affect all of our lives at one time or another. And you'll take all of this in your stride as you build good relationships with tenants, and all while maintaining a professional front, while still maintaining your landlord's full and warranted entitlements. You'll demonstrate compassion and work with tenants who can no longer meet their financial obligations by exploring plans and working with them to see whether there's any assistance they're eligible for, or see if you can rehouse them in more affordable accommodation. And in some cases, you'll become good at balancing the changing needs of both tenants and landlords by walking the fine line tightrope and learning to identify those that try to abuse certain situations to get away with more, as you become very good at identifying those that are willing to tell lies or try to cheat the system. Because at the end of the day, your job will be to avoid burdening your landlords with anyone else's problem and causing them financial distress. Thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, you'll also get used to being the constant conflict manager and just about everyone's punching bag. Working in customer service, you'll learn to accept that you'll never be able to avoid high conflict people or people with personality clashes. As the mediator and middle person in most situations, it'll be easy for everyone to take out their stresses on you. Now, some circumstances will just be darn inconvenient, especially when it comes to maintenance delays, but you're going to get it. You'll know that it's frustrating. You'll feel everyone's pain, and you'll be doing everything you can to smooth the journey for all. And don't forget the occasional scenes you'll experience at open inspections or in your office by offensive characters who'll scream and hurl abuse, because you're just going to get used to it. But most of all, you'll become everyone's true tough love friend and advisor, because the most important part of your role is building reliable and open, honest trust with all parties, because true friends don't tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, whether you want to hear it or not, because it'll be your duty to get the best results for everyone concerned. So if you're not going to be totally honest, ethical and transparent at all times, then you just won't make the grade and you won't last the distance. So to be successful, you display very strong communication with all people at all levels from all walks of life, and you'll have great organisational listening and problem-solving skills, as well as knowledge of the local market and all of the property laws. You'll be a great arbitrator and conflict manager, a great people manager, time manager, and multitasker. And you'll also have great admin and tech-savvy skills and be great at keeping accurate, up-to-date, and comprehensive records. You'll be a long-term forward thinker, have a positive can-do attitude at all times, and find opportunities where others always see obstacles. You'll be decisive and assertive when necessary, while encouraging and maintaining patience by all. You'll always be curious and creative, and you'll constantly look for better and smarter ways. And you'll be self-driven, disciplined, determined, and focused, all while maintaining incredible attention to detail. And it's likely that you'll often need to be available and contactable 24/7 to field, manage, and coordinate the inevitable emergencies and property maintenance issues that arise at the least convenient times, like burst pipes or failing hot water systems. And it's likely that you'll never feel like there's enough hours in the day to get everything done. So you'll need all of this and more in order to thrive in this fast-paced, challenging, continuously changing, and often highly pressured and stressful arena that's also very competitive and low-cost focused. Now, have I still got your interest in this mammoth job? You think you've got what it takes? Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention that the job only pays an average of around 60 to 70 grand a year. So are you still interested? Do you know anyone who has this broad combination of skills, aptitude, and attitude? And do you know what job I'm actually talking about? Well, I'm sure you've guessed already, but I'm talking about the most important and pivotal role that's critical to your property investment success, and that's your property manager. And given the diverse array of required skills and the pressure that's involved, is it any wonder that between 8 to 9 out of every 10 property managers don't last longer than 2 years in the game when they start? It's a revolving door. So how can you find and select the best suitable property manager to ensure your investment property continues to perform in order to achieve your long-term lifestyle goals? Well, this is where today's special guest, Jo Natoli, comes to your rescue, because there's no one better credentialed and better positioned to help you with this and all things property management than Jo. And she's had her sleeves rolled up in the trenches of elite property management now for over 3 decades as the founder of the Rental Specialists in New South Wales. And her expertise has actually been recognised as a current Real Estate Institute of New South Wales board member. So this week, Jo's going to start by unpacking the nitty-gritties of her own personal property investment and property management journey before digging into the details and the future of all things property management next week. So welcome. Let's get invested, Jo.
Hello, what a job description. Oh my goodness.
Well, I had a bit of fun with it.
I did that so well.
Well, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, to be honest, because as I sort of mentioned to you in the green room, not many people really understand the ins and outs of what a property manager does. And it's only when you really open their eyes to the full scope of what it's about that people suddenly realise how demanding that is, but also how little it gets rewarded financially, because as you would know better than others, everyone focuses on what's your percentage without understanding what the game's really about. And also because of that, because they're not understanding the intricacies of the exercise, they treat all property managers as the same. And as the reason I'm talking to you is that I know you've survived 30 years in the game, which is an absolute commendation in itself, but also there's a massive difference between a really good property manager and the job description I described and those that know enough to be dangerous, would probably wear off with that. But we're going to get back to that in detail in part 2. What I'm more keen to do now is shut up and get you to talk, because I talk way too much. And I guess to start that off, Jo, for those that don't know you or haven't heard you before, can you sort of start off by telling us what you do differently and, more importantly, why you do what you do?
So I am a property manager, a career property manager, and I got into the industry in 1991, and I actually got into the industry by accident. I was unemployed living in Wollongong, and it was just a sliding doors moment that I landed in a real estate agency. And after a couple of weeks there, I thought to myself, I could actually really make a career out of this. And as I got more into the agency and the industry rather, I realised that the sales environment probably didn't suit me too well. It was quite transactional, and that just didn't fit with my personality. I was drawn to property management because of the relationships that you have the potential to build with owners and tenants. And it's that longer term. You end up being if you're good at what you do, you end up becoming a trusted advisor to your clients. And I really, really enjoy that part of my job. And in 97, I decided to establish the Rental Specialists because I just felt that property management was something that you needed expertise in, rather than just it being something that agencies did by default or by accident or as a nursery to feed their sales pipeline. So, and I've been doing property management pretty much ever since.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Well, that, as I said a couple of times now, where that duration in property to be still standing and still looking as good as you do, Jo, is a testament to your ability to managing that very difficult environment. But something I wouldn't mind touching on and going back a bit beyond your property management expertise in relation to your personal journey, can you sort of talk to us about how your upbringing has actually affected your core values and beliefs and who you've now become as a result?
Well, where do I start? I always had an interest in property, always. I remember as a child, so I grew up in Wollongong, which is a regional town in New South Wales, about an hour and a half south of Sydney. And my father was a bit of an investor. I remember as a child going to investment properties and helping him paint the walls and things like that. But I also had a real fundamental interest in property. I would clip out in those days, we're talking years and years and years ago now, they used to publish floor plans in the local rag. And I would cut out the floor plans and keep a folder of my favourite floor plans so that one day when I design my dream home, I'd have some references to look at. But so property's always kind of been there in the background. And I think it was inevitable that I would end up in the property game. And I've always been interested in investing. My father he really drilled that into me. I've got to look after myself. I bought my first property with his help when I was 18 years old. So yeah, I'm also an investor as well as a property manager. So yeah, I've been investing in one way or another since I was 18 and yeah, you know what? I can't do my job if I'm not an investor, I don't think, because then I don't have the right mentality to do it. But yeah, so it's always been there. It's always been in my family. And yeah, I kind of don't know anything else, really.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think you make a very good point that I think the best property managers have to be invested because they understand what an investor goes through, some of the challenges, the fears they have. If they're just sitting at the desk doing the job, they're not really going to appreciate what they're doing, what they need to do to help their investor landlords. If you look back on your journey so far, and I'm going to dive deep into your property journey shortly, but if I look back across your journey so far, and I'm looking, not just at the work scene, but personally and otherwise, what challenging event in your life has brought about your greatest learnings and the biggest changes, Jo?
In 2006, in 2000 sometime, I can't remember the exact year, but I decided to join my husband, or my now husband, as a property developer, and we were incredibly successful. My first project was 6 units in Hurstville, and then I did 13 units in Wollongong and another 20 units in Wollongong. And my last project was 32 residential units and some commercial space, 1,500 square metres of commercial space. And it was an amazing project. So we were property developers. So we had a sizable portfolio by that time. And we used that portfolio as equity into this final project that we were doing. And we ended up building this beautiful building, and a week after we finished the building, the global financial crisis was splashed across the newspaper, and we lost all of our pre-sale contracts. And without getting into all the nitty-gritty, we basically lost the project. We lost all of our properties that we put in as equity. It took 2 years to kind of play out. Yeah, so we walked out with $60,000, our cars and our clothes, and was left with nothing. 10 years of hard work just gone pretty much like that. But, they're the risks you take when you take on property development projects. But the lessons that have come from that, I'm really thankful for. I am we didn't do anything wrong. We probably got a little bit of incorrect advice in structuring and how to set ourselves up from a legal framework in the beginning. But in terms of the project and the construction and the planning and all of that, that was all schmick. That was all perfect. It was just really, really bad timing. And part of that was a delay in the development approval process right at the beginning of the project. It took 2 years to get approved through council instead of 1. But there were problems in that council area at the time, and there ended up being a external administration being put into that council. So there was all sorts of factors out of our control that contributed to that, and we were just kind of really unlucky in many respects. But nevertheless, they are the risks that you take when you're investing in property in a wholesale manner, the way we were. And but the lessons are amazing. I mean, it was hard, really, really hard. And we both had to dig deep to get on top of it, both, emotionally, financially, mentally. But no one can ever take away what I've learned. And it's made me so much more smarter and so much wiser. And my clients really benefit from that now.
I can absolutely guarantee that'll be the case. So I'd love for you to sort of paint out the picture a little bit right pre-jumping into the development arena. Were you investing in, you mentioned you bought your first property at 18 and then you got into property development really in a big way at that time. Talk to us about what you were investing in prior to the development piece, and then I'd love to unpack what you've done since. So when it all came to grief, and you recovered and started to rebuild, what have you done and what's your approach been to property since then? Can you sort of paint out both ends of that for us?
So my first property was a little 3-bedroom cottage down in the southern suburbs of Wollongong called Dapto. A lot of people will be familiar with Dapto. I just happened to mention to my father one day that I wouldn't mind investing in property. And so he went guarantor on the loan. I think he might have advanced me a deposit. I can't remember the particulars now. It was so long ago. But he found this property for me. I was looking around for a while. There was some studio units going on in Wollongong at the time, the first of its kind done in Wollongong. I looked at those and he was steering me in this particular direction that I didn't really understand at that time, but now I perfectly understand it. But the property I ended up buying was a house with this huge backyard that you could ultimately put a granny flat on. So and that's when it dawned on, and the house was nothing. It was just your basic home that you could add value to. So that's when he started imparting these lessons about being able to add value. I had seen him do that in the past because he bought a block of land and built townhouses on the back and things like that. But this was my first introduction into how to add value to a property, how to create that equity that you need and so forth. But other than that, it was a bog standard, really boring purchase. It sat there. I collected rent. I paid the mortgage. I was thinking to myself after a few years, oh my goodness, this is just not fun. Nothing's happening. What can I do? But, and they say the first one's always the hardest. And it is. It really, really is. And, it was just a really uneventful, uninspiring investment. I ended up divesting of that investment. My father actually purchased it off me, and he had a tenant in there for years and years and years, and only in the last, and he still owns it, only in the last 5 years, he actually finally put his granny flat on it, renovated the front house, and is making some good coin off it. So, So that was my very, very first investment. And now I'm investing more in the commercial space. So I have 2 investment properties. One's a factory and the other is an office. So, yeah.
So drawing a thread through all of that. So the old set and forget a boring property to start with, which for a lot of Aussies, and I've often said, Jo, that the best investments are boring. It's like watching grass grow or paint dry. But if you want excitement, go to the casino. You went from that to the highs and lows of the development space, and being an ex-architect, I was pretty heavily involved in that. And my biggest probably mistake was a development I did in Alice Springs, would you believe? But I won't bore you with that story, but thought I knew it all and knew enough to be dangerous and paid the price for it. You've now moved into commercial. If we draw a thread through all of that, talk to us about your investment strategy and how that has changed over that journey and what it means to you now.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's actually a really big question. It's not something that I think about quite often, to be honest with you. So in the beginning, when I first started, you know what? I was really impatient and that's a mistake. But I will put that down to my age. I was only 18, but I needed to learn patience. I'm still a bit of a risk taker. Property development is very, very risky by nature. Yep. I am still a risk taker. I have a healthy appetite for risk, but I understand now how to mitigate that risk a little better. Would I do something as big as 32 units and 1,500 square metres of commercial again? Probably not. But I would be certainly comfortable doing something a little smaller. But in saying that, I would start off slower and smaller. So if I were to, so I've got these two properties now that are commercial. If I were to look to invest in something now, I would look at something that I can add value to. It would be in the residential space because I need to balance out my portfolio. So it would be in the residential space. I just love the idea of buying rental investment properties wholesale, which means develop. So I would probably find something that I could put a duplex or a triplex or maybe a quad on, and just sell enough to clear the debt and retain my profits in property. That's what I would do now. It's not much different to what my original intention was way back when I was 18. So my investment strategies haven't changed per se. It's just I think that the size of the investments and projects would have changed.
Yeah, now you mentioned risk management there, and it's an area that very few investors spend much time on, to be honest. Again, I've worked with a couple of thousand investors now over the years, and most of them are focused on the rewards. They don't think too much about the risk. You mentioned that your learnings from that experience were focused more on risk mitigation. Can you share with us some of those changes in your approach that recognises the risk and what that means to our listeners listening in going, okay, what does risk management really mean?
We thought that we were established or set up from a legal structure point of view quite well. But it's not until something goes completely pear-shaped that you do an analysis and go, okay, we probably didn't get the best advice here and there, but next time we know better. So when we first started out as in the property development, we didn't set up special purpose vehicles or things like that, but there was no separation between the owner of the land, the developer of the land, the builder of the land, those sorts of things. So we basically threw all our eggs in the one basket, which we now know is a massive no-no. So all of the properties, the way we worked was that we would develop a project, we'd sell down to cover debt, GST liabilities, and draw out a little bit of the profits so that we could survive and pay our own personal bills. And whatever profits were there were retained in units. So as we moved from project to project, we were basically collecting these properties that were wholesale investments for us. And we would use those properties to tip in as equity into the next project. So there was no separation. It was all just in one big basket that was completely exposed, which was such a stupid thing to do. But when you don't know better, you can't do better. It's not until everything collapsed that we just went, oh, God, okay. And even if we did get that advice during it, it would have been so expensive to actually undo everything that we did. But anyway, you live and learn, right? So that's one thing. It's really, really, we now pay particular attention to our ownership structures and making sure that we're protected in that way. So You know, I don't own any property myself. I just happen to control property. So, and that's the way I like to operate. And I think most savvy investors should have the same opinion. They own nothing but control everything. And that's how I like to operate now. And that's how we move forward. So, but you know what? It's even as simple as who you're bringing onto your team can be risky. And we thought we were doing the right thing by bringing on particular consultants who were really familiar with the local government area that we were working in and the major players and decision makers in that area. But that turned out to be one of our biggest mistakes because they were too concerned on the relationships that they already had and not disrupting them instead of taking care of me, the client, and pushing my endeavours through the approvals process. So people don't realise it, but the people that you bring onto your team have the ability to make you or break you and have a real impact on what your final results are. So that's another thing. We're really careful now about who we bring into our circle and who we take advice from and listen to.
Love it. I love that. You're absolutely right. And the average person who rocked up and said, okay, well, let's get a planning consultant who knows the local game. They'll have all the relationships. They'll be able to smooth this through easily. But you're absolutely right. They're more worried about the ongoing opportunity with those people than they are yourself. So some pretty big learnings there that the first-time punter is not even going to get their head around. So I love you sharing that.
Yeah.
And also just thinking very carefully about the rest of the balance in the team. I'd love your thoughts on this, Jo. I'm a very firm believer in having completely independent professionals in each of the major positions in your property team. Why? Because there's no collusion. There's lots of checks and balances. There's lots of robust discussions and differences of opinion between the different players. But that enables you to make much better informed decisions based on what's right for you, rather than be shoehorned by a bunch of people who are in each other's back pockets and they're probably subtly more interested in their interests than they are yours. What's your take on that?
I agree. I absolutely agree. It's like a board of directors. So I sit on the board of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, and you want that diversity of opinion and you want that diversity of professional expertise. You don't want a bunch of yes people sitting around you who are just going to tell you what you want to hear, because that is not helpful. Even if you end up having very difficult, robust conversations, that's good because you're always learning from someone. There's an old saying and it rings true all the time. Don't be the smartest person in the room. It's really simple. But you want to make sure that everyone else has, they're not yes men, and they can all think independently, and there isn't that buddy slap on the back relationship going on, where they're more interested in protecting that than providing quality, genuine, proper advice to advance your endeavours forward. So important.
Yeah, great learnings there. Let's jump forward a little bit then. What's the end game look like for you, and what else are you going to invest in to make that end game happen, Jo?
So my end game is fairly simple. I want an unencumbered principal place of residence. I want 5 unencumbered investment properties, residential, commercial. I really don't care as long as they make money. And that's it. I'm not, that's all I need. I'm not greedy. That's all we need. As long as, but the key is having your principal place of residence paid off. If that's not paid off, well then, but that's the end game. And to do that, look, we're just investing. We're actually looking for our next development project to do. Something on a smaller scale. So we're on the hunt for that at the moment. We're putting together some our team, and we're putting together some investors who share in the vision. And hopefully within 6 months we'll have a project that we can kind of sink our teeth into and start designing.
Love that. I love that. Something else that I'd love to jump into a little bit if we can, because there's a lot of people in the property space who, particularly buyers agents, and there's a good reason for that, I guess, who poo-poo new build and poo-poo development because of all the risks, the time exercises, the sharks that are supposedly in that game. I've never held that view. I guess as an architect and a project manager, I'm used to getting my hands dirty with building, so I think there's some real benefits because, as using your term, you are pursuing a wholesale road, so you're doing things at cost, and if you're doing it well, you're building it below what it's worth, so you're manufacturing equity. What are your thoughts on that? Because you'd be bridging both camps. As a property manager, you'd essentially be dealing with a lot of existing stock. Personally, you're investing in the new build development piece. So what are your thoughts to people who constantly hear this, don't build or don't go through that process, buy existing because it's safer and easier?
Look, I hear the same thing from investor camps, and people get that advice. Let me just say, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a quantity surveyor. I'm not providing any advice here to anybody. People say that because of the there's this whole discussion about tax implications, negative gearing, and all those sorts of things. And there's also a conversation about who's making the profit in house and land package type investments and things like that. Investing in off the plan can be really, really tricky. I acknowledge that. I agree. It can be really tricky. But if you have the opportunity to invest in brand new property like I'm doing, I'm building these properties. I'm fortunate. My husband is a builder. So I know, I've seen how he builds, and I've seen the properties that he builds stand a test of time over 20 years or so. So I know that anything that he builds is quality. The problem and the risk lies in you don't know who your builder is. Although fair trading is and the building commissioner have done a good job and continue to work in that space to lift the reputation and quality of construction. But the risk in that is you don't know who your builder is, and if you're purchasing in a development, you've got to know who the developer is as well, and really, really do your research on that. There's some of the primary risks, and also, there's whole tax implications, land and house packages, and depreciation, and a lot of people say don't invest in those sorts of things because of those things. But if you're investing in property for long term, you're not looking at making a quick buck, and you've got, again, people around you that trust that are giving you the right advice, I don't see the issue with buying something brand new. What I do have a slight problem with is if you're buying brand new in a complex of 100 or 200 properties, your capital growth, you're going to be waiting forever and a day for capital growth gains to kick in. You're one of many. The only time I would suggest you do that is if you're the last person to buy and the developer wants to offload and they're offloading cheaply. And then you might be lucky to pick up a deal. But other than that, you don't want to be one of many, do you? Because you're just not going to get the capital growth. You might get the rental return. But even still, if you're one of many, the rent, it puts downward pressure on rents and things like that. So I wouldn't be investing in something like that, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to invest in something like that. But if somebody wanted to invest in a new build and it wasn't, and they were purchasing it from a reputable builder and a reputable developer, and they know that the person who is suggesting that is not getting, 5% commissions and all that sort of stuff, well, then if it fits the strategy of the individual, I can't knock it.
Yeah.
I like buying wholesale. That's just me.
Yeah, and beautifully said. It fits a strategy, and it's the strategy piece also that often gets forgotten. People just decide properties are thing, and they'll talk to their neighbour or their accountant and who says they're paying too much tax, go and get a property, and that's about as much thought goes into it, and then they dive in and without assessing the risks that we've already spoken about, and miss out on the opportunity that new builds will bring. Because you are in control of your destiny, you are manufacturing equity if you're doing this well enough. So I think at the right time and the right strategy and the right timeline, then there's some real benefits in considering that. So the final question in this, Jo, you've been through a lot both professionally and from your own investment journey. What, if anything, do you still struggle with?
I do second guess myself sometimes when it comes to investing, I have to be honest with you. I do suffer from analysis paralysis. And I do tend to overthink things. I can't help that. That's just that's just the way I am. But I guess that kind of makes me look at everything from lots of different angles to make sure that I am treading in the right direction. What else do I struggle with? I actually don't know. You put me on the spot there. I can't. Yeah, I don't know. There's never enough money. What can I say? Again, I still am impatient.
Yeah. Well, it's and
I do struggle with my patience.
Yeah, well, the patience, but also the analysis paralysis. So they sort of counteract each other a little bit in that regard. So I appreciate you sharing that. If you were starting out again from scratch, Jo, what would you invest your time, energy and money in differently, if anything?
Education. Actually, my son's 20 years old and I have a daughter who's 16, and they both are saving like mad people because they both want to buy their first properties. And my son keeps talking about investing in this suburb and that suburb and this state and that state, and just he has these visions of grandeur. Wow. And I'm like, whoa, settle down, son. He's like a wild Brumby that needs to be tamed. And it's like, no, you're not doing anything until you invest in your education and you really learn first. No one can ever take away your education. And in many respects, I'm so thankful for everything that happened to us, all those difficulties that we had to traverse simply because of the lessons it gave us. So invest in education absolutely first. You can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong. And then the second thing I would say is start when you can afford it. And don't, you know what? There's always been this discussion about housing affordability and things like that. I remember even when I was, 25, 26 years old, people were talking about not being able to afford properties. I've always subscribed to the opinion you can afford a property, you just can't afford to buy a property in the location that you want to live in. Yep. Start looking at properties that you can afford in areas that you can afford. And just let the markets do its thing. Just because you grew up in Hunters Hill doesn't mean your first property needs to be in Hunters Hill. Go and buy a one-bedroom unit in, I don't know, Shell Harbour or something like that. That's probably not a cheap place anymore, but Dapto. And start there. Start there and just let things do what they do. I just think people need to understand property is a long-term game. Even if you're doing things wholesale like I like to do, it's still very much a long-term game. Again, patience. It's patience, isn't it?
100%. My favourite quote is the old Warren Buffett quote that wealth is the transfer of money from the inpatient to the patient. And
The patient, that's right.
never true, I think. I'm going to jump into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush round now, Jo, where I give you the old blindfold and cigarette and hit you up with 4 very fast and quick questions. So first of those, if you could have coffee with anyone, be they alive or a dead historical figure, who would you choose and why?
Frank Lowy. I have just admired that man and what he achieved since I was a child. I just love what he achieved. Frank Lowy.
Yeah, that
hesitation
says it all. On the investment piece, what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received today?
I can't answer that. I actually can't answer that. I can't think of anything. I mean, there's a piece of advice that comes to mind, but it's not about investing. I remember somebody saying to me when I first set up my business, "Why are you doing that? Just go and work for someone and earn you $600 a week and be happy." And that was the worst piece of advice that I've ever heard or received. So, not exactly investment related, but it's stuck in my head. Really.
Well, it sort of is. It's because if you're just taking a job and taking the paycheck, you're not investing in anything. Whereas if you're building in a business, your business is an investment, and all of the other complementary skills that come with it, and the wealth that you can create through your business is a very smart decision. So love that. It's a very different subject now, Jo. What superpower do you wish you had and why?
I wish I could go back in time because I want to redo everything. I would love to redo everything with the knowledge I've got today.
Love it. Love that. Yeah.
That would be amazing, actually. Can you imagine?
Would be amazing. There's a lot of mistakes I've made that I could politely sidestep and dance over with the knowledge I have today. I think, what's that old saying, that youth is wasted on the young? I think it's very true. I'm a big believer in habits, and habits are the things that really end up creating long-term sustainable wealth. What's a personal happy habit, a rewarding ritual, or a daily discipline that you employ that's contributed most to your success today?
Visualization and meditation. Keeps my mind clear, keeps me focused on all sorts of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, very good ones.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the visualizing how you want things to be and then giving yourself the space to actually work towards that absolute gold and taking the piece of silence and taking time out to actually do that. Not many people make time for that anymore, and then they wonder why they don't get the results because they're constantly being pinballed by every urgency that hits them. So love that. Look, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, Jo, so that there's a lot more that we'll dig into in part 2, but I just want to thank you now for taking the time to share the ins and outs of your quite inspiring personal journey so far. Before we close, if our conversation has raised any issues that listeners would like to confidentially delve deeper into in regard to their specific property needs or challenges, feel free to book in with me for a personal solution session by clicking the link in the show notes, where we'll spend a dedicated 60 minutes where I can download my 40 years of property experience to help you solve any of your challenges. And regardless of whether you're new to the game or an experienced investor, feel free to take advantage of our recent released self-paced Freedom Formula course that's been based on my award-winning book that you can do anywhere, anytime at your pace. Just click on the link in the show notes and you will be able to help you take things to the next level of your journey to achieve your vision and your version of financial freedom. We now look forward to continuing our conversation with Jo in next week's episode, where we're going to unpack the ins and outs of your property future through the pivotal eyes of all things property management. So remember to always get invested in your knowledge and your network, and we look forward to getting invested with you again then, Jo.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. Make sure you subscribe to Property Hub for free. Get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's top online property show for red-hot property investing news and insights direct from industry leaders and influencers. And finally, I'll see you next time.